Sentry mode activated. Target acquired.
Hey there, hunters. Now welcome back to the Gunners Guild. Today I wanted to talk about a kind of personal topic, to be honest, one that I hope some other people can relate to as well, and that is, of course, speedrunning, as you can guess by the title. Every gamer knows what speedrunning is. We have an entire marathon event dedicated towards it, and it's a much celebrated event in the gaming ecosystem. It prolongs life of games, gives people an air of competition and an entirely single player experience, and shows off all the crazy tech that normal players would never be able to think of. Speedrunning is a pretty niche aspect in most gaming communities though, albeit it is on the rise. However, I want to discuss my experiences with speedrunning, how it affects me and those I've talked to, because it's not all glory and fame. It's very much a double-edged sword, like a drug. Speedrunning is born of primal urges that we all experience. The strive to do better, the need to perfect, the spirit of competition. Just like many Olympic sports that are entirely done by yourself or a small team, you compete entirely against yourself, your timer score, and the time and scores of others. It's not a direct human versus human experience, but there's still the competition there nonetheless. Humans strive for competition and the need to be better and do better, and so speedrunning video games is a logical step when your passion is playing video games. I started speedrunning Monster Hunter games back in Generations around 2015 to 2016. Monster Hunter games naturally steer the players towards speedrunning, whether you're aware of it or not. The games are simple. You load up a quest to hunt the target, kill the target, you get a time at the end, and you continue on with your day. Now once you complete the story and hunt every monster, there's nothing left to do but get those times lower. Grinding for gear, getting more skills, and improving all lends themselves towards getting that quest timer lower and lower. I mean, why else would you be farming for decorations and equipment when you've already killed everything? It's just to get better, and for what? To farm faster? It's just that, go faster. So naturally, you are gearing yourself towards being faster and faster and playing better as you play. Now, it took me several thousands of hours of playing previous Monster Hunter games to even feel comfortable attempting speedruns, and it wasn't until Monster Hunter World several years later that I even started to post my runs and give it a serious go. Mostly because I didn't have a capture card for the 3DS. Now, speedrunning Monster Hunter games really opened my eyes, and it's not hard to see why people speedrun games, especially Monster Hunter games. See, Monster Hunter, for as big as a franchise it is, still is a very small niche community. Everybody tends to know everybody, which is kind of cool. I assume most other game communities are similar, but I don't really have that much experience with like some of the big games out there. But what communities seem to have in common is that you know who the bigwigs are, who plays the best, who has all the good info, who is the most entertaining to watch. Everybody knows those people in their communities, and one of the niches you can carve out is being the best, which is no easy task of course, but the recognition that goes with it combined with that spirit of competition and the struggle all kind of make it worth it. And ultimately, everyone who partakes has a mutual love for the game. After all, you can't spend countless hours playing a game you hate. Despite what you say when you're playing, you must really like a game if you want to speedrun it. And being able to discuss and strategize with other like-minded people about games you already love really bring together the whole speedrunning communities. It's a really good atmosphere when you're all on the same page. Although it's of course not a golden area of gaming, it is also shrouded in hate and misery. Now when you watch a speedrun, you're more often than not seeing a successful run, where it ends in excitement, celebration, it gets posted, new record, new personal best, all that jazz. Unfortunately, that's not always the case. In fact, it's rarely the case. Speedruns are never completed and showcased on a first attempt. Nobody walks into a game ready to speedrun. Time is required to learn all the ins and outs of the game, the experience to adapt to situations that go wrong, the knowledge to know when and where it is best to call it quits in order to reset and stop wasting more time on a dead run. These runs just don't appear out of thin air. The players must dedicate countless of hours honing their craft, their run, to be worthy of praise and recognition. RNG, or random number generator, a common gaming term used to describe when certain events are not fixated but rather can change every run based on some arbitrary number pulled from a CPU time or a frame count. Many runs can be ruined by no fault of the player, but by RNG instead, just some random coincidence, making the time spent getting those perfected runs more painful as you slowly realize it's not even in your control. This time used to run is not infinite and must be taken away from other aspects of your life. Runners often neglect responsibilities like work, relationships, and mental well-being, trying to achieve what they feel like is the best they can do. Time that could be spent better elsewhere, while on schoolwork, cooking, exercising, just relaxing. It's stressful, and the runner has to decide when it's good enough or when enough time has been allocated to the task. Unfortunately, this is where all the mental health issues start to creep in, and the darker sides of speedrunning that people typically don't see start to show. With the extreme amount of time required to speedrun, many runners often feel like the time is being wasted, especially when little progress is gained, or when little recognition is had. If you spend a month of your free time working on something and then try to show it off to people just to find out that no one cared, you feel pretty distraught, for sure. That month could have been better spent furthering your career or schooling, or honestly, just spent anywhere else probably would have been better. This is ultimately the reality for most people, especially for smaller content creators with no following at all. It's really hard to get noticed online. You end up spending months of your life working on your speedruns and seeing your work go down the drain. Now, unless you get a world record or pave the way for some new tech, it's really hard to get people online to get excited for some random player. This is a black hole that ends most people's speedrunning careers, although I'm going to use the word career loosely here. Those that manage to find the light at the end of the tunnel and get those hyped up, rushed doses of serotonin that you all see in videos of those completed runs live for that moment. But that's like a drug. It's fleeting, and you end up wanting more. Maybe you want to shave off a few seconds here or there. Maybe you want to try a new strategy. Maybe something can be done to save even more time. There's always something to improve on. The desire for perfection is never satisfied, and the time sinks do continue. The more you end up playing a game too, the more you end up getting stuck in your ways, and eventually you just can't play the game normally anymore. You lose the ability to casually play your favorite games, and everything just turns into a drag. Burdened with the knowledge, you end up seeing what aspects of your game are pointless to interact with, what weapons are the best, what pathing is optimal, and it's not just something you can actively ignore. It gets deeply ingrained into your mind. I can't possibly play Monster Hunter anymore without trying to find ways to improve even just the basic simplest of hunts. Like, eventually I get sucked down this rabbit hole of speedrunning. I keep telling myself like, oh, I just got hit once here. I can improve my time if I do X or Y. And then that cycle repeats once I do the quest again, and I'm like, oh, well, I could just do this slightly different. And then I just do that on repeat until I feel like I can't improve much more. However long that may be, it could be weeks, months, but it just eats at you constantly. Every time you do something, there's always that question in the back of your head, can I do better? It's like a drug at times. It can be very, very addictive, trust me. Playing Monster Hunter feels like being an alcoholic at a party. Everyone's drinking except you, and you know there's no just a sip. It's a slippery slope and you fall right back into old habits. And coming from both sides of that coin, trust me, I know. Eventually, the more you speedrun, the more you begin to hate the game. You see all the little flaws in the programming. A game you once loved, hell, a game you still love. It's like pulling back the curtain at your favorite restaurant and seeing how everything is made. All the disgusting ingredients, the poor conditions, the bugs, literally, and all the mess. Diving deeper into a game and trying to get better just ends up peeling that back, and you see all those flaws in the game and you start to lose all that love, and instead you just see all the mistakes. This could be entirely just my perception, but I've had a few people tell me similar stories. We never really lose the love for the game, it just gets muddled, and the more you take it seriously and the more you invest into it, the less about the game it becomes. It becomes about the run, the title, the achievement, the perfection. This ends up trapping players and forcing them into unstable grounds and getting sucked into this cycle of just dread and not fun. There's a lot of self-conflict that occurs in the runners' minds as well. Frustration and pain from a game once beloved, the extensive time dedicated to craft often ignored, and that little hint of adrenaline when you get all the elements to come together, giving you that rush of just pure testosterone. Like, I'm no stranger to this at all, but it's a lot of back and forth. I often go through periods of times where I feel completely depressed while trying to do speedruns, like my time's being wasted. Why bother? Nobody cares. I'm just trying to get 1 second off a run. Is it really that big of a deal? But that push in my mind saying you can do it just fills me with anxiety and pain even. More so when I had to abandon or give up a run that I'd already spent weeks doing or longer trying to perfect. It's not a good mental place to be in. It affects everything else you do in life. And when I finally get a run I'm proud of enough to just upload it, it fills me with excitement because the entire point of speedrunning is to share it, to talk about strategies, to showcase the limits of games. Runners live for that moment. It's all the stuff that happens before that makes everything just seem so bad. So sorry about the rant, but I guess the way to summarize this whole thing with, citing myself as the example would be that I initially had a great time learning and speedrunning Monster Hunter. I mean, it was really quite enjoyable in the beginning. However, the more time I dedicated towards it, the more I felt like I was doing it for nothing. And as a relatively small popularity began to diminish, entirely my own fault for sure, I began to feel less and less like people cared about any of my speedruns. So I was dedicating a lot of time to seemingly no reason at all because it wasn't about myself anymore. And it began to be less and less fun as I struggled to shave 1 or 2 seconds off my times. I mean, it meant nothing. I mean, 1-2 seconds, big fucking deal. But I felt like I needed to do it because I saw errors and I wanted to improve. Eventually, I just became annoyed and sad whenever I would spend 8+ hours a day trying to shave off minor amounts of times for a run. Then specifically for World, as more mods came out that began to just blur the line of legitimacy for runs, I felt like they were valued less and less. Eventually, I just stopped playing Monster Hunter altogether. Like I said, I just can't play the game normally without being sucked into that vicious cycle. So games like Monster Hunter World and Rise, I speedran until I became too depressed to play the game, and I just stopped. That's also why I do take frequent breaks from like streaming and content uploads. It killed my enjoyment altogether, honestly, and thankfully I'm not doing that with GU right now. I'm just taking my time to enjoy the game that I have, knowing I won't ever speedrun this game, and I really hope I can manage myself better for some break. So the next time you see a speedrun of any game, I mean, forget Monster Hunter, any run or any game, know that they dedicate a large portion of their time working on something they have a serious passion for, and uploading it to share with everyone to bring a smile and entertain their viewers. They competed, they struggled, and they persevered. Regardless of how good or how perfect their run is, know that it means something special to them. You only see the end result, not all the effort that gets put into the work leading up to that point. And people often get stuck in that trap of speedrunning, trying to achieve something, but either giving up or going unnoticed. Alright, that's basically all for me though. I did just want to touch up on this mental side of speedrunning a little bit. I know it's rather unorganized, I apologize, I'm not really good with editing and I tend to ramble on a lot. And also I just wanted to point out that this applies to not just myself, but others as well. And it's the reason why I don't really speedrun much anymore. It drives me to bad mental places, and if you get the same way, trust me, you're not alone. We're all fragile creatures out here. So take a break, talk to people about it, maybe someone you're comfortable with, just don't let it consume you, because it has for me, and telling you, it's not a good place to be in. Now, I'm going to go back to being a heartless machine. But yeah, that's basically all for me. Thank you all for watching, and good luck out there, hunters.